Good afternoon and welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture. In today's series, we are going to begin with a new series titled Economic Sociology, and in the first lecture, we are going to discuss the important discussion between formalism and substantivism. In the first half, I discussed the distinction between the formalism and substantivist approach to economic sociology. Now, the next lecture, we are going to discuss on Karl Polanyi and how he developed the substantivist approach in economic an understanding of how embeddedness is important for understanding the functioning of economy. So, substantivism stemmed from the writings of Hungarian lawyer turned historian Karl Polanyi, who argued that capitalism is a historically unique kind of economy that is disembedded from the social matrix. So, he was critical of the way in which economy was transforming and kind of moving towards a market based society where all relations were kind of seen as materialistic relations, and therefore Polanyi was critical of the decline of social and cultural relations in society. By implication, the socially embedded pre-capitalist economy studied by anthropologist, historian and classist cannot be understood using the formal economics developed by the neoclassical theories. Rather, Polanyi believed that new tools for analyzing the substantive economic must be employed. Formalists arose in opposition, arguing that capitalist and pre-capitalist economy differ in degree, not in kind, and thus can be analyzed using the tools of microeconomics. So, the formalists were kind of arguing that you can use a uniform universal method of studying any type of economy, whether it is a market based economy or where there is a non-market economy. Why? Because the sole function of economy is to ensure maximization of the profit. The substantive approach was critical of this and was kind of arguing that it could not be used as a method to study society in a pre-capitalist, pre-market society. Formalism largely displaced substantivism during the 1970s and 1980s as anthropologists increasingly focused on the economic integration of the world peasant society into the national and regional economy. However, by 1990s, both formalism and substantivist approach lost its ground to culturalism. And in culturalism, the cultural specificity like social relations and economy was seen as culturally specific became more dominant. Now, let us look into the work of Karl Polanyi and how he argued for a substantivist approach to the study of economy. Karl Polanyi's critical reading of the work of Malinowski's Strawberry Island and Richard Thornwell's work led him to produce work that made major contribution to economic anthropology. The concept he developed with the aid of anthropology were intended as tools for analyzing industrial societies, especially for explaining the causes of the Great Depression that took place in the 1930s and the changes with fascism in 1940s. So, we see 1930s onward this large scale transformation, and there is a kind of lot of economic loss, there is a lot of increase in poverty, there is political changes. So, how do you make sense of what is changing place in the economy is influenced by the social and political relation, and that is the reason that he started doing a critical analysis of the neoclassical theory. His larger aim was to lay the groundwork for a general theory of comparative economic that would accommodate all economies past and present. If we look into the work of Karl Polanyi, he refers to two meanings of economic. It refers to a definite situation of choice, namely that between the different uses of means induced as insufficiency of those means. Polanyi argued that these two meanings of the term have nothing in common. The formal meaning derives from logic, while the substantive meaning from fact. The formal meaning implies a set of rules referring to a choice between the alternative uses of insufficient mean. So, there is a kind of a option given. You have a commodity and you have a certain amount of material means to purchase that. So, the choice is whether you purchase it and you kind of satisfy your need, or you do not do it and you kind of remain unsatisfied. So, the formal meaning of economy according to Karl Polanyi is a kind of rational decision making between choice. Now, these choices are made by individual actor. The second meaning of economy was substantive, which implies there is neither choice nor insufficiency of means. Man's livelihood may or may not involve the necessity of choice, and if choice there be, it need not be induced by limiting effect of a scarcity of the means. So, for the substantive or the substance of the economy is not always decided by choice and insufficiency. It could be kind of a more negative approach, but was to make available whatever is there. You do not need to make a choice between 1 and 2, but there is a lot of kind of cultural meaning that if there is less, it would be kind of redistributed, or if somebody needs it more than the other, there could be a reciprocal relation. So, economy is not always a decision making between choice and insufficiency. The substantive meaning alone is useful for comparative economics. Polanyi argued because formal economy is applicable only to an economy of definite type. And what is this definite type economy? It is the market system or market exchange, in which livelihood routinely involves choice arising from an insufficiency of mean. So, you are economizing your action. You kind of make a decision, individual decision to use the economy to the best and kind of maximize the profit. Polanyi gave two root meaning of economic, the substantive and the formal. The formal meaning of economic derives from the logical character of the means end relationship as apparent in such words as economical or economizing. So, this is a kind of a formal understanding. Formal means to go by rule, that there is a kind of a given situation where there is certain demand, there is a supply, and depending on the material world, the market demand relations takes place. Now, if we look into his influence on anthropology, he was kind of great during the 1960s and 70s. Polanyi was kind of considered as having a great influence on the emergence of this discipline of economic anthropology, and he kind of considered, became more reckoned or became known from his work, The Great Transformation, which was published initially in the 1940s. In the work Great Transformation, Polanyi traced the development of modern market capitalist from the earlier system with great nostalgia for the past and predicted the imminent breakdown of our civilization. So, he was kind of applying an evolutionary theory to the development of a capitalist society where market or the material means of livelihood was more important and the social matrix was somehow declining, and that is why he kind of was afraid that it would lead to the breakdown of the civilization. In Polanyi's view, modern capitalism had elevated profits and the market over society and human values, turning everything into a commodity to be bought and sold. So, the commodification, everything in society had a price tag, and there was no importance of your emotions, of your culture, of your other kind of non-material relationship. So, that commodification was kind of seen as disastrous for the social relationship. Karl Polanyi thought that economics had developed along with the market capitalism as its servant, and was merely a part of the system that helped keep capitalism going by making it seem natural. So, capitalism was seen as the only way of progress and development. So, the material quest for profit and more profit was seen as symbolic of developed society, and as a result the social matrix was kind of almost become insignificant. Only capitalism institutionalizes formal principle in this way through the medium of the marketplace and the flow of money. In modern capitalism, Polanyi said, the economy is embedded in meaning, submerged in or part of the institution of the marketplace. That is the reason why he is kind of considering the economy as an instituted process. In the economic system of the pre-capitalist society, however, the economy is embedded in other social institutions and operates on different principle from market. So, in the capitalist, it is embedded within the market exchange, whereas in pre-capitalist society, it is embedded in the social institutions. Economy that are not built around market principle, Polanyi observed, are therefore not focused on the logic of individual choice, which is the basis of modern Western economic science. Without market, formal economics therefore has no meaning. To study these society, we need other principles, and these will depend on how the substantive economy of making a living is organized in each place. So, the substance of the economy is important. It is not only the market relation, but something beyond the market relation with that regulates the economic relation becomes significant. The understanding of Polanyi's substantive approach is to understand economy as instituted. Polanyi concluded that economics should therefore seek to find out how the economy is embedded in the matrix of different society. So, the embeddedness is important. Every economy is embedded in something or the other, and the task of the sociologist is to find out the embedded relationship in every society. The substantive economist should look first at non-market economy, economic institutions, for example, temples and tribute, and second at the process that holds the social and economic together in different settings. So, we kind of not only try to, if we were to study the economy of society, go straight and understand the purchasing pattern or the market relation. It is equally important to go outside the material relation, look into the religion, look into the culture, look into the gender relation, look into the functioning of the family, and then the second stage we were going to understand the relationship between economy and social relations. Polanyi's follower in economics came to be called institutionalist for this reason. They were looking at the institutional level of analysis. The institutions was not only the market, but also beyond market, religion, culture, family, and so on. The Polanyi suggested through his historical and cross-cultural study that there are three major ways the societies integrate the economy in. So, the integration between the society and economy can take place in three ways, and these three ways are kind of considered as reciprocity, redistribution, and market exchange. Now, the modern formal economy only studies the third. So, when we look into the neoclassical or the formalist approach, they are only looking at one form of integration of society and economy, that is the market exchange, whereas they are negating or they are ignoring reciprocity and redistribution. Reciprocity is a general kind of helping and sharing based on mutual sense of obligations and identity. Here the material factor does not count in. It is more in terms of your relationship with the other actors with whom the economic transaction is taking place. People help each other because they have cultural and social relationship. They belong to the same family or clan. So, it could be a kinship relation, it could be a communitarian feeling, or it could be a kind of relation emerging from friendship, that people help and share the economic resources. People help each other because they have cultural and social relationship and they kind of feel like doing the interaction. When we look into redistribution, it is a system with a central authority or some sort. So now this authority need not necessarily be a state which is there in the capitalist economy. The state becomes the important regulatory authority. Here redistribution can take place through the temple, through the priest or the chief who collects from everyone and redistributes different things back. Now, there is no kind of a formal rule of redistribution. The redistribution could depend on the individual cultural specific choice of the religious leader or the chief or the clan head. Third is market exchange. Now, market exchange implies calculated trade, which comes in several varieties in terms of, say, the gift or administered trade, or it could be market exchange. When we look into the modern market exchange, this depends on exchange of goods and services in return with money or material things. So, money and bargaining is used to set the price. So, every commodity indeed have a price depending on its utility and also depending on its demand and supply. Now, this market exchange is dominant in the capitalist form of economy. Polanyi thought that different combination of these three kinds of economic logic were found in all society, but in each society one of them was dominant. Where trade and exchange, the market exchange was existed, they have taken on very different meaning and social functioning than those described by neoclassical economists. When we look into the critique of Polanyi's critique of the formalist approach, we see the stepping stone of Polanyi's thought is his critique of the view of the economy by the neoclassical theorist or formalist. To orthodoxy, the economy is the choice between scarce means in relation to the preferred end. So, it is a relationship between means and end, and this he was critical of. Economizing means allocation of these resources. This, according to orthodoxy, is the economic problem. So, if you do not have the means to achieve the end, you are in a scarcity. So, the validity of such an approach is relative to the historical development and fact of a market society, a specific form of economic organization that decided the means and end. So, what is the mean and what is the end is decided by the players of the actors taking part in a market exchange. According to Polanyi, it is impossible to understand human society, the economy and human history from a formal perspective of a neoclassical economy. And this is a quote from his book published in 1977 and on page 6, where he says, because to narrow the sphere of the genius economics specifically to market phenomena is to eliminate the greatest part of man's history from the scene. Polanyi argues that the economy is substantive, reflecting two different levels. One, man's relation to nature and interaction with his surrounding, and two, the social institutionalization of the economic process. So, the economy is kind of in terms of how man develops a relationship with his environment, and the environment is inclusive of the social norms, regulations and culture. When we look into Polanyi's substantivism, we see the understanding of economic fallacy. First and foremost, because market exchange have not regulated the economy, but also for the fact that scarcity and choice do not entail a market. To believe so is to commit the economist fallacy according to Polanyi. Polanyi stresses against the formalist tradition that a market is only one possible way of allocating resources. Redistribution and reciprocity are other alternative and historically more important than the market. So, when we look into the idea of a market, what comes into term is modes of circulation. Circulation in the sense how goods as kind of resources are circulated within the actors of the economy. And in a market system comes into being, there is a market for the fictitious commodity of land, labor and money. It is only when the income, the bulk of survival becomes dependent upon the market that the market becomes the market economy. It is only then that the market takes over society and indeed becomes society. Polanyi stresses that there is no sense in privileging one mode of circulation in relation to the other. He says the need for trade or market is no greater than the case of reciprocity and redistribution. In fact, reciprocity and redistribution are more stable forms of economic integration than the market. So, the economic problems could be the reason because of the too much of focus paid on the way in which market regulates the relationship between economy and society. Polanyi points out to the fact that economy is the result of specific historical and social conditioning. But in pre-capitalist society, where reciprocity and redistribution are the main forms of integration and resource allocation, the logic of the economy is embedded in social relations. So, when we kind of look into the way in which Polanyi is giving to the understanding of an economy, the idea is to understand that we cannot understand economy only in terms of what is happening in the market, in terms of the exchange or in terms of state as regulating the relationship between market and economy. It's also important to understand what's happening beyond the market. And therefore, we kind of try to understand that there is a clear-cut difference between trade, market and the market system. These are conceptual clarity that is required to understand economy or economic sociology. Liberal political economy conflates them into one and believes that trade and exchange proves the existence of a market or at least a potential one and a market system. So, there are kind of no distinction between these concepts of trade, market and the market system. They are considered to be one and the same. But exchange need not necessarily originate from economic purposes or be regulated by economizing as the sole motive. So, exchange can take place not necessary to increase your economic resources or to kind of decrease. It could also kind of take place, for instance, if we go back to Malinowski's Kula exchange, to increase the prestige, to kind of build your kinship network. So, exchange should not be confused with the idea of monetary exchange. Even market with prices and commodities can be ruled by status, kinship or other social function, so that economizing aspect of choosing among scarce resources plays no significant role in it. So, scarcity need not necessarily lead to some kind of poverty or some kind of economic problem. Even if there is scarcity, the social cultural relations can help to take care of it and kind of handle that resources by redistribution or by reciprocity. The market system is an instituted order according to Polanyi, an order not spontaneously evolved from acts of exchange and trade, but from the commodification of labor and land. And therefore, to come to the conclusion, exchange is as old as human history, but the market system is rather a novel phenomena. The creation of a market system is dependent upon social collective action, not individual economic one. In that sense, the market is an instituted process as is the market system. So, we need to understand integration of economy and society by looking into the relationship between the economy, culture, polity and other non-material relationship. And this is what Polanyi meant by the substantivist approach to economic sociology. For reference, it is important to read Karl Polanyi's work published in 1992, Economy as an Instituted Process, and this is a chapter in Max Granovetter and R. Swedberg's book, The Sociology of Economic Life, which was published by Westview Press. Reading this text will give us a good understanding of Karl Polanyi and his substantivist approach. With this, I come to an end of today's lecture. Thank you.